He interrupted the orator with murmurs and by recalling the question. I am in the question, he replied with more warmth than ever. The measure taken in 1792 is not applicable to our epoch, because the dangers are not the same, because then a just mistrust was a duty. And at this moment, confidence is a necessary virtue, because at that time a perjured king conspired. And that today the Republican magistrates hold by your suffrages the reins of the executive power. Upon this short and feeble discourse of Chenier, Lamarck replied by a harangue prepared like that of Jourdan, and in which the vehemence did not exclude the adroitness, the proclamation of the dangers of the country, and the nomination of a commission of public safety being only, according to him, but auxiliary means to aid the government. He terminated by crying out, "Liberty or death!" The assembly, electrified, rose all together, and repeating this cry, the effect produced by Lamarck had alarmed us. And I spoke in the following terms. In terminating his discourse, the last speaker calls for liberty or death. A movement of unanimous approbation has been manifested among us. I will also repeat those admirable words, liberty or death. It is here that liberty would find, if required, her last asylum. Here the suffrages and the opinions are free, and whatever may be your deliberation, no one will suppose that the violence of which this place has been the theater would give to your vote a contrary direction to your real sentiments. No, the excesses to which they have abandoned themselves have not influenced you in any way. Fear and weakness are far from our arms. He who could yield to those vulgar sentiments would be unworthy to sit here. A crowd of the deputies cried, "Yes, yes, speak, speak!" The motion of our colleague Jourdan has been presented to the Commission of Seven. I combated it at that commission. I ought and I will combat it at this tribune. Representatives of the people, at the crisis in which we find ourselves, there is no longer anything to dissimulate. It is necessary to explain ourselves with frankness. This sitting must show what you desire. Fresh interruptions from our adversaries inform me that I was in the right road. Our intentions are the same without doubt. We all desire to save the Republic, but we differ in the means of saving it. To find the best, we must seek after them with calmness. We must regulate and discuss instead of endeavoring to stifle it. We must enlighten ourselves by a mutual tolerance. We must renounce on both sides imaginary quietudes. What union can you hope for among the people when their representatives give them such an example? But I come to the point. You want to save the Republic. Two means are offered to you. Some desire the declaration that the country is in danger, the permanence of the councils, the call for a new federation, and above all, a commission of public safety more active. Others, under the circumstances in which we find ourselves, fear that all extraordinary measures may be fatal. I think like the last. I declare that I see today no safety for France, but in an intimate union between the first authorities, a state that is sharply menaced at the exterior and torn in the interior by armed factions, cannot be saved but by an energetic power to which all constitutional attitude is assured. Yes, in our position, we must augment the strength of the executive power, or we must change it. There is no medium. Out of one or the other of these two parties, you would have nothing left to do but to accumulate to yourselves all the powers. Is there the safety of the Republic to be seen? At these words, a violent agitation manifested itself in the council. I had put my finger in the wound. Despotism, say you! The dictatorship! Who would offer it? Who would dare to accept it? There exists then among us very cruel mistrust, the shame of that proposition, the infamy of that yoke. Would they find here one single man who would not arm against them with the sword of Brutus? But I have only spoken of the dictatorship to reply to those who made use of that word to interrupt me. It is in vain that they would put me aside from the question. I despise the clamors, and I do not fear menaces. I shall say all I think. I will say that when the enemy is at the gates, if there is an imperious necessity for the true friends of the country, it is that of union. Shall I recall to you the example of the ancient republics? In the common danger, the resentments were suspended. In England, must that nation be cited to the French to seek examples of wisdom? In England, there is no longer any discord when the land is menaced by the enemy. Parties are then at an end. Parliamentary opposition sustained the principles of our revolution against a dominating ministry. We threaten Ireland, and suddenly Pitt and Fox are of accord. They are no longer rivals, but fellow citizens marching against the invaders of their country. Well then, representatives with us also, safety is in the Union. Instead of thinking of changing the system, we ought today to concentrate all the means of strength in the government. We should lavish all upon it. There is but one case where we must follow another road. If the government appears to you to be guilty of treason, or you think it unqualified, then there is nothing to be done but to judge and punish it, and above all, replace it. But indeed, I do not see with what serious reproach you can accuse the executive power. I have not disguised my opinions against the ex-directors. I have contributed to their fall. I should act in the same manner, if they deserved it, against their successors. Permit me to inform you that there is in the Republic an authority which, to save the state, we ought to imitate the calm, energetic, and constitutional attitude. If we had followed the example of the Council of Agents, our dangers would have perhaps been less great. As for the reaction which they talk of, the Directory has taken every means to repress it. It is far from my intention to justify any reaction, other culpable and fatal. But without action, there is no reaction. And it is the action which is, in the first place, it would have been wise to prevent. The necessity of giving a great latitude to the executive power in the public dangers is so evident that those who would themselves today overturn the Directory would be obliged tomorrow to reestablish one stronger. Ought not our predecessors to have obeyed that necessity? Was it not to that to which the committee of the convention owed its powers, famous for so many prodigies and so many horrible evils? Of what use, in fact, would a government be that was powerless? What good would an authority be to which contempt was attached, and that they could dare insult it with impunity even beneath the walls of its palace? There were murmurs. Those murmurs, which interrupt me again, strike agreeably to my ear. No one, they tell me, will overturn the Directory. I trust that no person has such an intention, but representatives of the people, do you not see that the system which they propose to you would soon mislead you, in spite of yourselves, beyond all constitutional limits? The measures of permanence, of federation, of dangers proclaimed, of commissions of public safety are good, excellent, when they want to destroy that which exists, overturn a power of which they despair. No one will pretend that they are the means of union and concord. It is concord and union of which we are in need.